Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Mike Tagliere, and today we're going to be talking Week 6 waiver wire pickups. It's a really shallow week though, Tag. We're not going to be talking about it too long. We're going to be doing a lot of Q&A as well.
Bobby, you sound a little under the weather today. What happened? Did you lose your voice at going to that baseball game? I mean, come on, Bobby, it's October. We don't do baseball games. We do football in October, right?
I mean, I'm actually sick. I did scream a lot. That was a lot of fun. But man, it is a baseball playoff season and NHL season and NBA is coming up. I guess we should probably talk about football, though, because that's why most people are here. It was a really exciting week. Tons of scoring, man. And no injuries, which is great. But that also means a boring waiver wire week.
It does. And I mean, there's a few things that have popped up over the last 24 hours since I actually recorded the Waiver Wire podcast with Jake Seeley that we definitely need to talk about on this podcast because There are apparently a few injuries that weren't well known after Sunday's games, but we're definitely going to get into those.
Yeah, so we've got a new look. You'll be able to see the players we're going to be talking about at the bottom. I'm not spending more than $1 or $2 fat bucks on anybody. But Tags, before we get into the waiver wire, I want to say thanks to the sponsor of today's show, Manscaped. You guys have heard Tags and I talk about Manscaped before and how it's just kind of revolutionized below the belt grooming, right? I told the story about my friend who, nicked his family jewels. It just happens. Yeah, the thing is, Tags, how many people do you think have tweeted me and said, dude, I've got a similar story like that. I did this to my manhood.
I mean, there's a reason that so many people laughed when American Pie did it, right? I mean, when Jim did that in there, because it actually happens to guys when they trim down there. So fortunately, Manscaped has kind of come to the rescue.
Yeah, they did. And I want to show you. I was told, by the way, not to demonstrate during the live stream how this works. But this is their below the belt grooming tool. And you can see it's really small, but it works extremely well. And I absolutely love it. I also wanted to show you guys this because not only is the below the belt grooming their thing, but they've got this body wash and hair that they sent my way as well. And I had no idea what it was going to be like. It is the best smelling body wash I've ever had. So Manscaped doesn't just have below the belt grooming. They've also got that as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about it. What I just showed you is their redesigned electric trimmer. It's called their Lawnmower 2.0. It has proprietary skin-safe technology, so the trimmer isn't going to snag your nuts. Manscaping accidents, they're going to be a thing of the past once you use Manscaping. I've seen, by the way, people use the same trimmer on their face and their nuts. Dudes, that's disgusting. Knock that off. They also have a crop preserver. It's an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits. Why aren't you putting deodorant on the smelliest part of your body? Guys, you can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code FantasyPros at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job. Your balls are going to thank you. All right, Tags, you ready for this, man?
I am as ready as I'm going to be after that.
Okay, dude, let's get into it. The name I just saw scrolling at the bottom of the screen, Byron Pringle, I think is going to be a popular pickup this week. I don't love the pickup, though. I mean, if I need a wide receiver, sure, he's like my 6th or 7th option at the wide receiver position. It's not saying much, though. It's a bad week for waiver wire pickup. So what do you think about Pringle?
Yeah, I'm not really picking him up. I'm not interested. He's basically like the 5th in line at wide receiver for them. The only reason that he played so much this past week was because Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill were both not on the field for Patrick Mahomes. So in a game where missing those two options, it was kind of an emergency. The running backs weren't very heavily involved. Everything kind of fell in the right place for him, and nobody played him, but now everybody wants to chase him. But with Tyreek Hill coming back to the lineup, it's going to be him. It's going to be Demarcus Robinson in 2 wide receiver sets. It's going to be Mecole Hardman coming on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. So you're left with him relying on another injury. So yeah, I find no reason to pick him up right now.
Yep, I would agree with that. It's really going to take a lot. I mean, he looked fine. Anyone's going to look fine in Mahomes' offense, but Pringle did look like a good football player. And so if the opportunity does arise, yeah, he'll be a hot pickup, but it's not going to be here now or likely in the future. So I would just leave him on the waiver wire. Let's wait and see what's up. Tags Devante Parker. Let's also talk about Preston Wilson in the same breath because they're virtually the same. They've got the same exact weighted opportunity from Miami. And you're thinking, why would I pick up a Miami Dolphin? Well, they're playing Washington this week. Great matchup. Also, Devante Parker, Tags, he might get traded in the next couple weeks.
I mean, they're unloading a lot of players. I don't know if Parker's going to get traded or not, but what we do know is that over the 2 starts for Josh Rosen, we've seen Preston
Yeah.
Williams get 19 targets. That's fantastic volume.
Yes,
I mean, and if there is a wide receiver in this core that, would get shadow treatment from Josh Norman, it would be Devante Parker, which means Preston Williams is probably one of the better plays. If you're looking for, because we have 4 teams on bye this week, obviously people are going to be struggling to find people to put into their lineup. And I think that Preston Williams is a guy that I'm going to rank him in wide receiver 4 territory, is like an emergency start. I think he should give you a solid floor with that target share. And Washington, I mean, the reason that they've allowed so many fantasy points on the ground is because of pure volume. And I just don't know if we're going to see pure volume out of the Dolphins rushing attack. So Preston Williams and Devante Parker are both worth adding if you're desperate at wide receiver. But if you have the choice between the two, I'm actually going with Preston Williams.
I would agree with that. I'm going with Preston Williams as well. I do think Parker has more upside because of the possibility of a trade, but we're talking about a 10, 20% chance thing. That's not something you want to rely on when you're picking up a guy at the end of your bench. I'd rather go for this week with Preston Williams, who I'm going to have ranked in my top 40 wide receivers this week. Not a great play, but a solid flex play. And maybe the best you'll be able to pick up for this week if you need a stash. Another guy that I think is a solid pickup this week, Deontay Johnson. I get it. Mason Rudolph isn't great. I was a little bit overboard about what I expected from him this season. Maybe it's because of how Tomlin's using him more as a game manager than letting him air it out like he did in the first week when he took over for Big Ben and looked good. But Johnson right now is the number 2 wide receiver, and Juju's going to be preoccupied with Casey Hayward, I would expect this week, Tags. Is that right?
Hayward doesn't travel into the slot, which is obviously going to affect that. So I'm guessing
Juju doesn't always play in the slot. They're not using him in the slot as much as they used to.
Well, if they go 3 wide, they do. They're slotting him into the slot when they go 3 wide because James Washington and Deontay Johnson aren't big slot receivers. So I'm not with you on this one just because I don't want to be associated with the Steelers team. And in fact, I talked about this on the show yesterday. I'm willing to get rid of James Conner at discounted prices. You might be able, some people are still willing to pay a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 price tag for him because they feel like he's locked into a lot of touches. But I was talking to Adam Azer, our friend over at CBS yesterday, and he highlighted the fact that he hasn't received more than 15 carries in a game, dating back to last year. Like he hasn't been heavily involved, and this is not a high scoring offense anymore. It's not the offense with Antonio Brown, with Ben Roethlisberger in it. Even Juju Smith-Schuster has been seeing this affect his stats. So I'm not excited to own anybody there in Pittsburgh right now. And if you're able to land, if you have Juju, if you have Connor, I'm willing to sell them right now at somewhat discounted prices. And I'm not chasing Deontay Johnson on the waiver wire.
I would go acquire both Juju and James Conner if you want to trade them to me. Like, where do you have James Conner rest of the season? He's a top 15 running back still, right?
I don't. I have him as like the RB 19 in my rest of season rankings.
Okay.
He needs
what did you expect against the Patriots, Seahawks, 49ers, Baltimore Ravens last week? Yeah, he went up against the Cincinnati Bengals and only had he had 18 touches for 125 yards and a touchdown. It's a solid week. That's the only matchup that he's had that's not been like bottom quartile matchup.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that they're just not going to be in scoring position very often. And James Conner is not.
I think they will be because they're not going to be playing the Patriots, 49ers, Seahawks, and Ravens every week.
So you're saying you have faith in Mason Rudolph to lead them down the field?
Yeah, I have more faith in Mason Rudolph than I have in a lot of other quarterbacks.
Ew, no.
They've still got a good offensive lineman, man.
Oh,
they've still got a good offensive line. James Conner's getting the lion's share of the work. Jalen Samuels is out for a month now.
It helps.
It helps, Conner, man.
I was about to say Jalen Samuels, that whole idea, that helps for sure. It helps that we just found out that he's going to be out for a month.
Yeah. Benny Snell's not taking any carries from him.
Right. Benny Snell's terrible. But so that does help. And he is guaranteed volume, but it's still a bad offense. And James Conner hasn't looked particularly good on the carries that he has received this year. This offensive line doesn't look quite the same. They did lose Marcus Gilbert at right tackle. I don't think that's, again, they have had tough matchups and their schedule is not even great. So again, I just, if you're able to get someone to pay you, like if you can say, let's say that you could trade James Conner and someone like, I don't know, another player on your roster, like a Mecole Hardman, if you could trade those 2 players away for someone like Le'Veon Bell, who's going to get Sam Darnold back in the offense, that team is going to start scoring more. I'm not confident in Mason Rudolph or that Steelers offense to even have like competence, basically. That's what I'm worried about with James Conner.
Do the Cardinals have a good offense, Tags? Do you trust David Johnson?
I mean, they have an offense that moves the ball.
They scored one more point than the Steelers. What about the Lions? How do you feel about Kerryon Johnson, Tags?
Well, here's another thing I would say to you. Kerryon Johnson, I'm good with. Like he has
they've scored fewer points than the Steelers this season. I don't get it.
Points per game?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's right.
Oh, absolutely, dude.
I don't think so. Anyway, so going back to the whole idea about David Johnson and the Cardinals, the reason there is because David Johnson has seen 8+ defenders in the box 1.6% of the time. That's it. Like
what?
2% of the time. No, seriously, it's an NFL next gen stat. That's the reason he's averaging 4 yards per carry, because they go 4 wide and you can't load the box against them. Against the Steelers, it's completely opposite. The Steelers teams will do that continually. And it's not to say James Conner's a bad running back. This is not me saying James Conner's a bad running back. It's because I just don't want to tie myself to that offense. So to me, he's like a middling RB2 that he's not going to win you a fantasy championship. That's basically how I feel about him.
I mean, that's fine. I would agree with that. I do think he's a value right now in the trade market. So I would acquire him and Juju Smith-Schuster. This is the waiver wire show, though. Deontay Johnson is actually my number one waiver wire pickup this week just because it's so crummy. But the way I've explained it is there's like 8 guys that you could put at number one because nobody is worth more than a fab dollar or two. It really just depends on your need and situation. And so, if you need a streaming quarterback, do you go with Gardner Minshew against New Orleans? Do you go with Kirk Cousins against who do they go up against? I don't even
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia has a bad secondary. Those are the 2 top streaming pickups. So one of those guys could be your number one waiver wire pickup if you need a quarterback. Which one would you choose, though?
I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins here, just because Philly is going into Minnesota. We saw, the squeaky wheel get the grease last week with Adam Thielen. Stephon Diggs is still someone they need to make happy at some point if they're not going to trade him, because you just don't want a disgruntled employee if you're going to keep him working for you. You know what I mean? You have to feed him at some point. Philadelphia was down to legitimately 3 backup cornerbacks last week. And where the best talent they have is probably in the slot. And we haven't really seen Adam Thielen or Stephon Diggs play a whole lot of snaps in the slot. Knowing that Philadelphia Eagles, I don't think they've allowed a running back to total more than 44 yards or something like that against them, which is just crazy this season. And that 44-yard performance, by the way, was on one run by J.D. McKissick. So Dalvin Cook probably going to struggle a little bit, kind of like he did against the Bears when he finished with under 40 yards rushing. But to move the ball against Philadelphia, you go through the air, and it's going to be relying on Kirk Cousins to get the ball out quickly. I would assume him at home is going to have better odds to do that than Gardner Minshew. And the reason I say that is because Minshew is a guy that going against New Orleans, what does New Orleans do really well? They take away a number one option, and DJ Chark is probably going to be shadowed.
You're number one. Man, he's good.
Yeah. DJ Chark is fantastic. And I continually move him up in my rest of season rankings, but he's going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, who happens to be a really, really good NFL cornerback.
Yes.
So
destroyed Mike Evans last week.
Yeah. I mean, with Sheldon Rankins coming back to that defense, they're stopping the run. So it's going to be a struggle for the Jaguars offense to do too much against the Saints this week. So I would rather take my chances. I don't think Cousins is a sure thing by any means, because Philadelphia does bring the pressure, and Cousins has sucked under pressure.
Yes.
But I think it's a better bet to bet on his wide receivers getting open against Philadelphia's secondary.
I prefer Minshew a little bit just because of how consistent he's been.
Yes.
Week 1, he filled in and still got 19 fantasy points, 22 for 25. Week 2, he went up against Houston, 16 fantasy points. Week 3 against Tennessee, that's a very good defense, 18. At Denver, 17. At Carolina, he's only played good defenses, 21 points last week, and he's got 16 plus points in all 5 weeks. New Orleans has been his easiest matchup of the season. I think he's going to be fine. Lock him in for 16 points.
Yeah, I don't mind Minshew. I actually have him as a middling quarterback too, and the 16 fantasy points is probably right around where I would project him. The question is really what's his upside in this game, and I don't think it's very high, which is why I'd rather take my chances on Cousins.
What's Cousins' upside? 20 pass attempts? I mean, I guess he could get 20 fantasy points with those, but
no, because they're not going to, like I said, they're not going to be able to run the ball. So I would anticipate Cousins throwing the ball 32 times this game minimum.
Sure.
And if he's throwing the ball 32 times against that Philadelphia secondary, there could be some big plays. And again, I do like Stephon Diggs. He's one of those guys where it's I'm not saying that you need to buy him, but if you have him on your roster, don't drop him. Don't trade him away for nothing. Wait, just wait a minute. If he doesn't do it this week, okay, I'm off. But I do believe he does well against Philadelphia, and then you sell him after this and get rid of him. But Stephon Diggs,
I don't think you'll be able to sell Kirk Cousins, man. And,
not Cousins, no, Diggs. No, Diggs.
Okay, sure. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I want to clarify something. I was exaggerating when I said what's his upside 20 pass attempts. So far this season, 32, 21, 36, 27 after the horrible week 1 where he only threw the ball 10 times because they were up by so much against Atlanta. And Kirk Cousins has not been bad. He's been really bad under pressure. That's why I'm a little bit concerned about him this week. But you're right. I think he is going to throw the ball. He's definitely not a bad play. I just prefer Gardner Minshew a little bit.
That's fair.
You know who else I really like is Kirk Cousins' teammate, Well, I mean, if you need a running back, you're not going to get anyone who helps you immediately. Ito Smith is the closest you're going to get probably. I've got him as an RB4 this week. So someone you could play in the flex, wouldn't feel good about it. It's a good matchup this week. They go up against Arizona. Actually, Arizona's been pretty good against the run, but what I'm saying is the game script looks good to be going up against Arizona, and he's likely going to get some more touches. Hit 11 last week and looked fine. But if you need a running back from me, it's either Alexander Madison or Chase Edmunds. Which do you prefer, Tags?
It depends on what you're looking for. If you want to stash a running back, it would definitely be Madison for me. But if you're looking for one that might play this week and have an extended role, it's Chase Edmunds, because David Johnson hurt his back and he kind of like gutted it out through the performance. And they said that he had trouble sitting up at his locker after the game. And that's always worrisome, for a running back. So I believe that Chase Edmunds, even if David Johnson does play, that they're going to lighten his workload a little bit this week. And we saw Edmunds last week kind of take advantage of the opportunity he was given. 86 total yards and a touchdown against the Bengals. Now, granted, it was the Bengals, but this week they're against the Falcons, another defense that's really, really struggling right now.
Especially against pass catching backs like Edmunds.
Yeah. And so again, if you're not using a running back this week, like Madison's definitely the one, because, we talked about this in the podcast, and that Dalvin Cook, if something happened to Dalvin Cook, if something happened to Ezekiel Elliott, like Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison are guys that people would legitimately empty their fab budget on. So you want to have those guys on your bench so that you don't have to do that they're potential lottery tickets. Chase Edmunds, I don't know if he's that. Like, he would still be a very high quality pickup if David Johnson had to miss extended time. But I don't think he's a guy that people would spend their entire budget on. But grabbing him now is not a bad idea either, though, especially if you need someone this week.
I think there's 5 potential league-winning backup running backs available on the waiver wires, and I would rank them like this. Number 1, Alexander Madison. Number 2, Tony Pollard. Number 3 would probably be Malcolm Brown. Todd Gurley is getting a lot of goal line work. Obviously, they're not running the ball as much, but Todd Gurley played a ton, got some receptions as well. So they're starting to warm up to their running back a little bit more. But Malcolm Brown, I think, does have that RB1 potential. We saw him. You think he looked better than Todd Gurley in his time playing for the Rams in week 1 and 2. Number 4, I would put Chase Edmunds. And number 5, I'd put Raquel Armstead in that Leonard Fournette role, runs like Chris Carson. Those are 5 guys. If you need a running back, you've got a bench spot that you can wait just in case anything happens. I mean, those are 80% fab guys if anything happens to the starter. But I would prefer Madison first. Is he your number 1 as well, Tegs?
Yeah, Madison would be Pollard or Madison. I don't have a problem with either of them.
Yeah,
I might
they're
go
both
Pollard.
right up there.
Yeah, I might go Pollard just because they might involve Amir Abdullah or whatever. If something happens,
say his name.
Mike Boone. But no, I don't have that worry with Pollard anymore. It seems like he's a clear-cut guy. But yeah, I mean, can we talk about Jacoby Myers now?
Yeah, good call.
He's someone that I brought up on the podcast yesterday, and Jake wasn't as excited as I was about him. But with Philip Dorsett injuring his hamstring, he's not going to play on Thursday night. That's not going to happen.
Edelman might not play on Thursday night either.
What's that?
Edelman might not play on Thursday night either. You've got 2 starters banged up, and Jacoby Myers was incredible in the preseason.
If Edelman doesn't play, I legitimately am going to rank Jacoby Myers as a top 20 wide receiver play this week.
Top 20. Whoo.
He would be locked into lineups like 100%.
I guess against the Giants, yeah, I would definitely use him.
Yeah, the Giants have been abused. The Giants have been abused through the slot. I didn't see anything. Did you see something in regards to Edelman not playing?
I don't know. I feel like I did, but then again, I'm under the weather, so maybe it was like a dream or something. But I mean, Edelman is banged up, right? He's got the rib issue going on.
Yeah, but he
maybe after
well.
a short week off, they just say let's give him a break.
Well, I mean, the Giants for that game, it's ugly, man. Like, the Giants are going to be without Saquon Barkley. They're going to be without now Evan Ingram. It looks like they're going to be without Saquon or Sterling Shepard. Like, all of a sudden, like, what is happening to the Giants right now? It's very possible that Golden Tate sees like 20 targets this week.
Well, I like Darius Slayton a little bit too, because what do the Patriots do? They shut down the number one weapon for the Giants. And right now, I mean, because first of all, Wayne Gallman's hurt too. It's going to be Jonathan Hillman. And we didn't even talk about him at running back because they're going up against the Patriots, and then Saquon's back. So like, what sense would there be in picking up Hillman? Don't fall into that trap. But Darius Slayton, they're going to shut down Golden Tate, I would imagine. And Slayton, I think, is going to have a fairly big game. I'm going to throw in some GPP lineups. And if you need a wide receiver 5 type to fill in at wide receiver, you play in a deeper league. You can't get Devante Parker, Preston Williams, Deontay Johnson. I think I would prefer Darius Slayton over maybe Jacoby Myers or Jameson Crowder this week. What do you think?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I honestly don't think that Tate is going to be shadowed by anybody. Stephon Gilmore doesn't traditionally play in the slot, and I don't think that they view him as that much of a factor. It's like it's a very short week to change their game plan now that Sterling Shepard's been ruled out and Ingram.
Sure.
I don't know, man. The Giants are going to have trouble moving the ball, but Tate should see a lot of targets. So, but yeah, again, Jacoby Myers is the one that, like, if you're dying at wide receiver and you're looking for someone to plug in and you're like, let me get some action on the Thursday night game. I believe that he's like someone that you could watch because he has played, even when he came in relief of Philip Dorsett last week against the Redskins, he came in and played, I think 45% of his, he ran 45% of his routes from the slot, which is obviously very valuable in this matchup. So if Julian Edelman's not 100%, maybe they pull him early in that game and they just give Myers an extra run, a guy that dominated, like flat out dominated the preseason this year.
So Tags, I was wrong about the Detroit Lions because they did have their bye already.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was
That's
wrong.
what I thought. I was like,
they do have fewer points on the season, but that doesn't really mean anything. So I don't know. I like Kerryon Johnson just fine, but I still prefer James Conner a little bit. What do you think about Jameson Crowder this week against the Cowboys? I see right now I'm looking at ECR waiver wire rankings. And so we had a bunch of guys, as always, a bunch of analysts around the industry rank their favorite waiver wire targets who are available in at least 50% of leagues. And Tags, they've got Jameson Crowder number 1 over Parker at number 2, Johnson at number 3, Williams at number 4, Pettis at number 5. I would have Crowder below all those guys.
I probably would have him below all those guys too. I'm not really excited about him. Now, Sam Darnell, it was announced that he's going to be back this week, which is always a positive. But
I mean, that's fine. But like Demaryius Thomas had 9 targets last week. Herndon is back.
Yep. They want to get Robbie Anderson going. Le'Veon Bell's going to get targets. It's just like a very crowded team that I don't see anybody ever getting, those 12 plus targets that Crowder got in week 1. And especially in this matchup against the Cowboys. The Cowboys, I mean, if you go back to last year, there were just like, I think it was 14 wide receivers who scored, who finished as top 24 options against them all season long, which was like the 3rd best team in football. Like they basically limit their performance. They're willing to give you underneath stuff, but you're not gaining much on it. So if you're in a PPR format, I guess Jameson Crowder's fine, but he's not.
No.
He's not someone that I'm attacking. No,
I don't think so, man.
Not.
He's got 2 receptions in each of his last 2 games. I mean, in week 1, we knew it was going to happen because Buffalo has a funnel defense to slot receivers. And then Jameson Crowder went back to being who he is. Somebody who catches, 4 balls for 40 yards pretty often. And that's fine for a wide receiver 6 or 7. But we have to forget about week 1. It was a fluke. If a lot of guys had a fluke in week 3, you'd be like, oh, that was a fluke. He didn't do anything in week 1 or 2. But just because it was week 1, everyone thinks, well, this might be who Jameson Crowder is. It's not. It's not who he is. And now he's the number 5 option on a Jets offense that's passed the ball for under 500 yards this season.
Well, right. I mean, but we have to keep in mind that Darnold coming back is bigger than anything here. Like it's
okay. So yeah, maybe bump him up to 800 yards.
Well, that's the thing is like with Darnold back, like even last year, if we watched Quincy Enunwa at the beginning of the year, and then we watched Jermaine Kearse get targeted as the year went on when he started playing more in the slot. And it's like Darnold has gravitated towards slot receivers. We saw it in the preseason with Jameson Crowder doing well with Darnold in the field. And we saw it in week 1. So I don't want to write him off. Like I think Crowder should be owned. I don't think you need to go out there and spend like more than a couple fab bucks on him though. He's not someone that I'm willing to spend 10 fab bucks on or anything like that. If you want to spend 5 because you're really short at wide receiver and you're hoping to land someone in your PPR format, that's fine. But outside of that, I don't think he's a sure thing in this offense. That's for sure.
So do you prefer him over Preston Williams? Do you prefer him over Jacoby Myers?
It depends on if you need what you need them for. If you need someone for this week, Preston Williams would be my pick of the bunch. Crowder is probably going to be somewhere close to Myers. I think Myers comes with more upside than Jameson Crowder would, but Crowder is probably the safer play. So it really depends on what your team is looking for. And that's always difficult with a waiver wire, right? Because there's a lot of different people with a lot of different situations. But if you're looking for safety in a PPR format, yes, Crowder would probably be my number 1.
So Tags, I've got Johnson as my number 1. It's really close, by the way, between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 10 this week. Like, I'm not joking. There's really not much of a difference. And there's 10 guys that I wouldn't mind having on my roster. But I've got Johnson number 1 for what it's worth. I've got Dante Pettis number 2. He did lead the team in snaps for wide receivers. And this is a guy that we formerly thought had wide receiver 2 upside that was going to lead the 49ers in targets. If he is starting now and he's the number 1 option in Jimmy G's offense, I mean, they're not going to be playing these positive game scripts every single week where they run the heck out of the ball. they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. And I think Pettis could be a week-to-week starter. And so I like that upside more than somebody like Jameson Crowder, more than somebody like Auden Tate, who's going to disappear once AJ Green comes back.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm I'm definitely a fan of putting Pettis on your bench, but he's not someone you're going to want to play this week. I'm actually researching that game as we right before we started doing this, and he's going to be matched up in the slot against the Rams, which is a tough matchup against Nickell Roby-Coleman. He's one of the better slot cornerbacks in the game over the last 4 years. He has never allowed more than an 85 quarterback rating in his coverage. So with Pettis playing a lot of slot snaps, we also don't know if Pettis is actually a full-time player or if it was just kind of like a product of that game going south, because Debo Samuel was the guy playing the most snaps, and then he's now third on the team. And it's what is really happening here? And I don't know if we could take a whole lot from that Cleveland performance. He
didn't look good either. He dropped a very clear cut. What was it? A touchdown? He dropped a really easy pass. Dante Pettis on a slant.
Was it in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, it was.
I literally turned that game off.
It was ugly, man. I mean, he only had 3 targets, but he played all the snaps. So I'm interested in Pettis. Somebody I am really fond of. I see him all the way down here at wide receiver 10. I want to get your perspective on Demaryius Thomas. I mean, I get it. He was bad last year. He was playing banged up. He got traded midseason. Before that, 6 consecutive seasons with 950 receiving yards, and then he comes out in week 5 and gets 9 targets. I think there's a chance he's the number 1 in this offense, Tags.
I don't. I mean, it goes back to the whole idea that it's an aging wide receiver coming off an Achilles tear. I said it before the season.
Not everyone's Emmanuel Sanders, right?
And I know Emmanuel Sanders has broken that trend, and that's fine. Yeah. He's the outlier to what has been an injury that people don't come back from. And Demaryius Thomas, even before he had that Achilles tear, there's a reason that the Broncos moved on from him. He was fine with the Texans, but that was obviously a much better offense than the Jets. So yeah. I'm not really interested in Demaryius Thomas outside of a spot start here and there if they're playing a pushover defense, and I don't think the Cowboys are that just yet.
I think that's fair. I understand why someone would not want Demaryius Thomas, but at this point, if I'm getting a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, I want someone with upside. Who has more upside, Demaryius Thomas or Jameson Crowder?
Crowder.
What? You really think so?
I do. I don't believe in Demaryius Thomas anymore.
You don't think there's any chance Demaryius Thomas returns to that 900-yard receiver?
Nope.
Okay, I would disagree with you on that. But again, I'm not excited about Demaryius Thomas. I'd spend one fat buck on him. All the wide receivers we've talked about. Tags, any other wide receivers you want to talk about? Keyshawn Johnson, Paul Richardson, Willie Snead, Duke Williams is the starter now that traded Zay Jones to Oakland. Trey Quinn, Randall Cobb. It's pretty ugly down there.
I say no. I say we get into the Q&A and answer some questions.
Hold on. We got tight ends, man. And we might have a big debate here because people got really mad at me on Twitter about this one. By the way, if you're enjoying the show, if you don't mind hitting the like button, it tells our bosses this is content that you guys appreciate. That way we can continue making it a priority. And we've got a couple other shows going on during the week as well. I do a live stream on Thursdays at the same exact time, talking start sit, answering a lot of questions about that one, going through my rankings. Tags does one on Sundays. Tags, what time do you do that?
Yeah, that's at 11 o'clock Eastern time on Sundays. I sit down for a full hour and basically just take start and sit questions for an hour straight. And a lot of the injuries will break at that time. So in the middle of the show, you can get immediate reactions to what the injuries mean, who's active, who's inactive, and kind of go through that.
That's right. Okay, Tags, let's talk tight end. And I'm really surprised to see that the ECR expert consensus prefers my guy, Gerald Everett, because I got so much heat for saying I prefer Gerald Everett over Chris Herndon that I thought that I must be like a raging lunatic. Maybe I still am, but I think I'm right about this one. Which one do you prefer?
I'm going with Gerald Everett 100%.
That a baby. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taking the chance that the offense under Sean McVay is starting to change a little bit. And, when they drafted Gerald Everett in the second round, you had to think that they had plans for him at some point. And Jared Goff right now is struggling to throw the ball. I know he had a couple nice balls against the Seahawks on Thursday night, but he's someone that has struggled over the past, going back to after their bye week last year. He hasn't played very well. Over his last 13 games, he's averaged just over 1 touchdown per game. So knowing that he's getting comfortable throwing over the middle of the field to Cooper Kupp, to Gerald Everett, who looks phenomenal after the catch.
19 targets in the last 2 weeks, mind you.
Yeah, and so to be fair, Jared Goff has thrown a ball a ton in those matchups, and so that's something that we do have to account for. But again, do you really want to tie yourselves to this Jets offense? Last year, Chris Herndon, he was fine, but it was a different offense, guys. Adam Gase, traditionally, we haven't seen him utilize the tight end position, even going back to when they drafted Mike Gesicki, that we thought the Dolphins wanted to target him. Jameson
And
Crowder is
Herndon
there
was
over the
competing
middle
for
of the field.
targets with Jermaine Kearse, right?
Yeah.
And Isaiah McKenzie.
Yep, that's the thing is like the Jets team looks a lot
Trenton
different.
Cannon was third on their team in targets from the time that Chris Herndon started playing well. Like that's no competition. No, they added Le'Veon Bell. They added Demaryius Thomas. They added Jameson Crowder. We're talking about the number 5, maybe number 4 option in a poor Jets passing offense compared to Gerald Everett, who might have some upside because he plays in one of the top 3 passing offenses in the NFL. I'm not saying Jared Goff's a top 3 quarterback. I'm saying in terms of fantasy production because they pass the ball so much.
Yeah, and by the way, Adam Gase has he's said that Chris Herndon is not even guaranteed to play this week, that he doesn't know if he's in game shape or that he should be playing. So Adam Gase is doing Adam Gase things, and you just don't want to trust that.
Yeah, they're going up against Dallas as well. Not a very good matchup for tight ends. Chris Herndon's going to be outside my top 15 tight ends this week. I will likely have Gerald Everett right there around that 12 mark. And it's always top 11 is really easy because there's 11 solid tight ends. And then that 12 to 20 range is really close, but Everett's near the top of that. So I would definitely prefer him, and I prefer his upside. I don't think Herndon is going to be what he was last year because just like Jared Cook, it depended on who he was playing with. Jared Cook was splitting targets with Jordy Nelson was the number 1, Marcel Aitman, Jalen Richard. Those were the top 4 guys in targets on that team. Then he goes to the Saints and he's splitting targets with Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. And guess what? He's not very good. It's the same kind of thing with Chris Herndon. I get it. He's more talented, but he's in a really bad offense.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk DST streamers really quick before we go Q&A tags. Is there somebody that you like this week besides obviously Washington against Miami?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I like Washington that much.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'd prefer to take Carolina. Carolina is available in, I think, 70% of leagues. And they're
What? How?
I don't know. People just don't want to play him for whatever reason. Like we played him in DFS last week. They made sense. And now they're going up against Jameis Winston. This game is overseas in London, so we don't know like the effect it'll have on the players, but
yeah,
we've seen Jameis Winston that things can affect him. And if one thing goes south for Jameis Winston, all of a sudden you're going to have yourself the number 1 defense that week. So I'll take Carolina and the fact that they pressure the quarterback.
Yeah, they're a perfect streamer. In fact, I'm looking at ECR right now. That's the expert consensus rankings again. We've got the Patriots, Ravens, Cowboys, Chargers. Those 4 are all owned in pretty much every league. Then you've got the Carolina Panthers, number 5. Green Bay Packers, still available in a lot of leagues. Yeah. Number 6 against Detroit. I like them quite a bit as well. And for what it's worth, Washington is at number 8. So tags, let's go Q&A. By the way, we're taking questions on trades as well. So get those in. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can, as always. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, however. So if you guys have more questions, tweet at us at Mike Teglier NFL, at Bobby Fantasy Pro. We're also on Instagram at the same handles as well. So check us out there. We're also at Fantasy Pro. At Fantasy Pros on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe as well if you want the future content. We've got 3 live streams during the week, several videos that come out as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us a like if you're enjoying the show. Tags, let's go to the Q&A here. Is it still worth picking up Rashad Penny? I didn't even mention him as a backup running back because I just assumed he's available in every league. But yeah, I think I would probably prefer him to everyone except Madison and Pollard.
I would actually prefer him over those guys as well.
Okay.
Yeah, if something happened to Chris Carson, Rashad Penny's the league winner. They run the ball too much to pass him up. You know, the CJ Pro sites would walk into, like a 5 to 7 per game, like touch per game role. But Rashad Penny would be locked into 20 touches a week. And like, that's a good offense to be a part of. Russell Wilson should be considered the MVP right now.
I would say so as well, even over Patrick Mahomes. I think Shaq Barret belongs in the top 5. He has been so good for the Bucs. I don't think we've ever seen a defensive lineman have this much impact on the game.
I disagree. I mean, Khalil Mack did it last, like
he did this. He was on pace for 32 sacks through 4 weeks.
I mean, it's
multiple touchdowns.
We're still in a 5-game sample size. That's
I understand. I'm just saying through 4 games, nobody has been better than Shaq Barrett's been.
Oh, I get that.
This doesn't matter for fantasy football. We can agree to disagree and move on so we can get to more questions. Does anyone know if Herndon's going to start this week? Tags, you just talked about that. Is Dede Westbrook a worthy pickup? I would say no.
Yes. Dede Westbrook is going to be a top 30 play this week. Love him. Love Dede Westbrook this week. And if you could pick him up, like he would be my number 1 waiver wire ad.
Really? Okay.
DJ Chark doing everything that he's doing. Dede Westbrook is no longer a focal point of a defensive coordinator and what you need to do to stop him. So you're going to see that a lot of times when Dede Westbrook is in the slot, which is where he plays, 80% of the time.
Yeah.
That's when you're seeing a cornerback that's not a full-time player up against him, because nickel cornerbacks just come on the field when there's 3 wide receivers. And it's usually the lesser of all the evils. And this week that's going to happen against the Saints, where TJ Williams has been abused in the slot, whereas DJ Chark is going to see a lot of Marshawn Lattimore. So I like Dede Westbrook a lot this week. And if he's available,
gives up 29 PPR points per game to slot receivers.
Yeah,
that is a ton. That is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I don't think Dede Westbrook is even a lock to be the number 2 in Jacksonville's offense anymore. Keep in mind, I'm a Jags fan. I watch every single play, and I think Chris Conley is involved just as much as Dede Westbrook is. Now, I get it. We like Dede Westbrook a little bit more during the season. This is a better matchup, so I would agree with that. But long term, I don't think Dede Westbrook even has wide receiver 3 upside, wide receiver 4 upside.
I disagree. We'll agree to disagree.
Okay. All right. Odell Beckham, what in the world is going on here, Tex? Is he a buy low? Is he a sell while we can? What do we do?
I sent out like 4 different offers in leagues that I'm in today and trying to buy low on him. If you could buy him for wide receiver 2 prices, like if you could trade Juju Smith-Schuster for him right now, I do it. Again, I'm trying to rid myself of bad offenses. And I know that the Browns have been a bad offense, not saying they haven't, but at some point, Freddie Kitchens has to say, whatever I'm doing is not working. So let's try it a different way. And he could say, Todd Monken, you're going to take over as the play caller. And if they do that, things are going to change relatively quickly. I felt like they were heading in the right direction, but we kind of regressed. But again, you don't find elite playmakers available for this low of a price very often, and especially coming off a game on Monday night that everybody saw, and nobody wants a part of Baker Mayfield right now. And everybody says that he's now a terrible quarterback. He's not a terrible quarterback. He had a bad game, and he's going to be fine in the long run. So it's just like, this is the idea of buying someone at their low point and selling someone at their high point. Would it shock me if someone was able to trade Will Fuller for Odell Beckham like today? No, it wouldn't shock me at all. And you should do that if you're able to.
Yep, I would agree with that. A couple other guys that I would move for him. I would trade Tyler Lockett for Odell Beckham without question. I would trade Adam Thielen for Odell Beckham without question. What about Tyreek Hill, Tags? Who would you prefer?
No, Tyreek Hill is one of the guys that I have him as a top 5 wide receiver the rest of the way.
Do you? Okay. Yeah, I've got him top 10, no doubt about it. I think I would still prefer Beckham to him just by a little bit. I mean, let me ask you this, Tags. Who's a better real life quarterback right now? Jameis Winston or Baker Mayfield?
Mayfield.
Yeah, it's Mayfield. It's really not even close. We've got Chris Godwin in our top 10, don't we? I still have Mike Evans in my top 12. Both those guys, top 12 wide receivers by a crummy NFL quarterback.
But
I think Baker Mayfield can still support Odell Beckham as a wide receiver 1.
Well, I do believe he will, and I think that's going to happen, and that's the idea. That's the reason that we're willing to buy low on him. But the thing is you don't want to trade away players that have proven production. Like Chris Godwin is proven this year. He's proven that he can get it done 80% of the time. You don't trade away players like that. You try and buy low. The idea is to buy low, not to like literally sell Chris Godwin, who's legitimately a top 10 wide receiver the rest of the way. The idea is to buy someone that you have maybe outside your top 15 wide receivers. Maybe people are like, hey, I'll trade Kenny Galladay for Odell Beckham Jr. Give me Odell Beckham. So those are like the players that I look to do it for. You don't want to sell players like Cooper Kupp, like Chris Godwin for Odell Beckham, because in the end, it might turn out to be somewhat equal. And that's in best case scenario for Odell Beckham, because obviously this Browns offense is struggling right now. The idea is to buy low and hope that things get better. There's no guarantee of it, though.
Tags, what do you think about dropping Darrell Williams for Gus Bus? I mean, I get it. Gus Bus doesn't have a ton of upside, but that's Gus Edwards, by the way. He's going up against Cincinnati this week. So Mark Ingram's going to get his. Baltimore's going to be out to a big lead. And I would imagine they use Gus Bus a ton in the second half. I've got Gus Bus in my top 35 running backs this week, so you could flex him if you need a running back.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I would definitely consider if you're like in a pinch at running back position. I'm not excited about Gus Edwards at all, but at the same time, he has seen 30% of the red zone carries for the team. Mark Ingram is only totaling 59% of the carries overall for the team, and I think people would be surprised to hear that number. But the reason that Mark Ingram is viewed as a big fantasy asset is because he's scored 6 touchdowns while Gus Edwards has none. That might change this week. They both could score against Cincinnati. It's a terrible defense, and that should be a runaway game for the Ravens. So I do like him for this week.
I would agree with that. Okay, Tags. Here's another question. I think we already answered this one kind of. If you've got the Green Bay defense, would you drop them for Washington this week? I'd prefer Green Bay this week.
Yeah, I'd hold on to Green Bay. I don't want to trust Washington's defense at all. That team is just so lost right now. I honestly think Josh Rosen is not like a bad streamer, which is weird to say.
That's funny.
Like, that's if you're feeling lucky. Like, obviously, we already talked about the streaming options at quarterback, but I don't think Rosen's like a terrible play this week.
All right. Let's see here. A trade question. I love these ones. Would you trade Le'Veon Bell for Ingram and Landry?
I'll take Le'Veon.
I'll take Le'Veon too, but it's really close. It's so close that I would say go with your gut. But I would prefer Le'Veon. All right, another trade question. Chris Godwin and Jordan Howard for Josh Gordon and Kerryon Johnson. So let's break this down. Godwin over Kerryon, right?
Godwin over Kerryon, yes.
So what is the difference between Godwin and Kerryon bigger than the difference between Josh Gordon and Jordan Howard?
Josh Gordon is much better asset.
I agree with that. So I would rather have Kerryon and Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I think, I would probably agree with that. I think Josh Gordon's one of the better buy lows in fantasy football. Despite the fact that Tom Brady's averaged over 37 pass attempts per game this year. And that's despite the fact that they're blowing out their opponents. Like in 4 or 5 games, they've blown them out and he's still averaging that many pass attempts. Eventually, like Josh Gordon's going to start scoring those touchdowns and people are going to be like, oh, he's a wide receiver too. And he's like a high-end wide receiver too. But right now, people view him as like a middling wide receiver 3 that they don't know if they should start.
As long as he's not suspended, that's who he is, and he's not suspended right now. So I would be glad to get Josh Gordon, but I drafted him in a lot of leagues, so I'm just going to hang on to him. Mm-hmm. Is MVS droppable, Tags? I would say no.
No, absolutely not. I talked about that last week in the primer, that the matchup for both Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling was not good last week, and I had them both outside my top 30 wide receivers, despite being the number 1 and number 2 options for Aaron Rodgers. Things will get better.
By the way, Tegs, you and I both finished, I don't know if you saw this yet, we both finished top 20 out of 140 in accuracy last week.
I did not see that, but it's good to hear.
I beat you, though, by the way. I was top 5.
Nice. Good job.
All right. Would you pick up AJ Green, Kareem Hunt? I want to throw Hunter Henry into this mix as well.
Kareem Hunt, no, absolutely not. He's not coming back till week 10. And
when he comes back, like he's not taking over the job from Nick Chubb, people.
Yeah, Nick Chubb's been like one of the bright spots. AJ Green is definitely worth rostering. I don't know if he plays for another week or 2, but if you're in a position where you have a roster spot open that you're kind of like you have someone there that you feel free to drop, absolutely he should be rostered.
I've got him top 24 rest of the season. I would prefer him over Larry Fitzgerald, barely over Terry McLaurin. I'd prefer him over his teammate Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore, Emmanuel Sanders. If you can go get AJ Green off the waiver wire, that's amazing. If you can get him in trades, I think this is a good point to buy him. And when AJ Green's been healthy, he's been a wide receiver 1 every single season of his career in the time that he's played. That's who he is.
I wanted AJ Green so bad this year. He was being undervalued and then the injury happened. But the reason that I have him right around like the wide receiver 31 rest of the season. So I like him, not as much as you do though, where it's like, he's a guy that I definitely want to stash if I can, but he's coming off a foot injury. Like that's a problem for wide receivers. It's the reason that I've moved Devante Adams down my board. Like he's my number 9 wide receiver for the rest of the season, just because foot injuries can literally derail an entire season and they can force players to miss games like Devante Adams this week. So that's my concern. It's a good thing that he had surgery because obviously we know the problem's fixed. It's just more of a matter of rehab and getting through it. So I just don't think you're guaranteed to have him for another couple weeks.
I would agree with that on Adams. I've got him number 10 right now. If you can trade Adams to someone with Beckham, would you do that?
I actually thought about that when I was doing my rest season rankings, and I this one's really tough.
I would do it.
I'd probably keep Adams just because of the hope that like when he does play, he's still tied to Aaron Rodgers, but it's close for sure.
I think there's a chance that Odell Beckham from this point on is the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football.
Oh, there's a chance for sure. Like his upside's there. Like he's done it with Eli Manning. He just needs like the play calling's been atrocious, man. Like it's been so bad. And Baker Mayfield hasn't been good in his own right, but we have seen Baker Mayfield play well in this league. So I don't want to give up on him just yet.
What about Hunter Henry?
I mean,
would you prefer him to Chris Herndon? I would.
I mean,
he's coming back in 2 or 3 weeks, man.
Can I say neither?
You can, but you're wrong. I'll fight you.
Yeah, I don't want to stash an extra tight end on my roster if I can help it, unless you have like deep rosters.
Yeah. Well, okay. Guys, we're going to take, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 more questions. I did want to say thanks again to the sponsor of today's show, Manscaped. They've got precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Make sure to check out the 20% off code and free shipping with the code FantasyPros at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job. Your balls are going to thank you. All right, Tags. Let's close this out with a couple more Q&A questions. Let's see here. Okay, sorry about that. A lot of start-sit questions. If you've got those, save them for Thursday when I do my live stream. By the way, subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get notifications for those future live shows. Should I drop Witten for Everett? Absolutely. He's top Witten's not top 20. Everett is top 15 rest of the season for me.
They're both streamers for me. I don't know if either of them are the answer for your team's like struggles at tight end, but I think Everett is the one that I would definitely choose.
Do you think there's a chance Tyler Eifert gets traded to the Pats? And if he does, I mean, I would assume we'd want to start him most weeks, right?
Nah, I don't want him. The injuries have piled up to the point, and then like to go and try and develop chemistry with Tom Brady. Like we've seen people like walk into tight end. We think that Patriots tight ends are going to perform because, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, those guys did, Martellus Bennett, but those guys were actually good tight ends. I don't think Tyler Eifert is good anymore.
Yep. I would agree with that. Is AJ Green going to get traded?
I mean, it's the last year of his deal. He'd have to okay the trade. I think
I would imagine he would have no problem okaying the trade.
Yeah, it just depends on where he would go to. But yeah, I mean, we've heard whispers about like Patriots being potentially interested in Stephon Diggs, but I don't know why they would trade him, honestly. But AJ Green would kind of make sense for a team that's rebuilding.
All right, Herndon or Greg Olson? It is definitely Greg Olson, right?
Yeah, especially this week. Greg Olson playing against Tampa Bay, a team that he went over 100 yards against back in week 2. They've really struggled against tight ends, but I'm okay dropping Greg Olson after that. Like I'm not tied to Greg Olson for the rest of the season. I don't think he's a must play every single week. He's a streamer. I think once you get outside like the top 8 tight ends, they're streaming material, and you don't want to hold on to them and deal with. Greg Olson over the last 2 weeks has had 5 yards combined.
Yeah, that is true. Greg Olson, Delaney Walker, Will Disley, Jimmy Graham, Hawkinson,
Walker could be cut
all
too.
in that same range. Yeah, I agree with that.
Walker's third on his team in snaps at tight end.
Wow. Yeah. So is Eric Ebron, by the way.
Yeah.
Mo Alley Cox led that team in tight end snaps last week.
That's
an interesting one. If he starts, that's a really interesting one.
I had Jack Doyle. ahead of Eric Ebron this week because we've seen this. Like the trend has been going that way, and Ebron's been terrible.
Would you trade Leonard Fournette or Aaron Jones, or do you think they're both sustainable what they're doing? I would hang on to both of them, Alvin.
I mean, it depends on what you're getting rid of them for. I mean, Fournette, if you sell high, I would still take Le'Veon Bell over Leonard Fournette right now, because that offense is going to get better. But it does. I will say it helps Leonard Fournette that DJ Chark and Gardner Minshew are like the real deal, because they're going to soften up defenses for Leonard Fournette, something he hasn't had throughout his career. And then going over to yeah, I mean it's close, but Aaron Jones,
it's not a trade. He's got both of them.
Aaron Jones is my dude. So Aaron Jones is my guy. I announced this season. We said, who's your guy? And it was like, mine was Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones, the player, but I don't know if I trust what Matt LaFleur is doing with that backfield. Jamal Williams is going to come back, and we don't know if that's going to mean more split carries or not. Hopefully he understands what he has in Aaron Jones because he's a really good football player.
I've got Leonard Fournette rest of the season, RB number 7, ahead of Melvin Gordon, Chris Carson, David Johnson. I've got Aaron Jones 11, just ahead of Marlon Mack, Le'Veon Bell, Derrick Henry. I like them both quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I do like them both as well. It's hard to find a running back like Fournette that's locked into 20 touches a week, that's game script proof, that is involved in the passing game. So he's definitely a top 10 running back the rest of the season. So you shouldn't actively look to trade him. No.
All right, one more question, then I have a comment I want to make as well. Vernon Davis faced Miami or Gerald Everett. I would prefer Vernon Davis this week.
Is Vernon Davis clear to the concussion protocol? I don't even know if I've seen it.
It might be Jeremy Sprinkle again.
It could be. Yeah, it's really hard for me to say that. So I'm gonna. I guess I'll say Everett. I'm not excited about either of them, though. I don't think either. I would rather play Greg Olson.
So somebody came out and said Josh Gordon not putting up any points. He sucks, guys. I want to remind you, through 5 weeks last year, TJ Yeldon was vastly outperforming Christian McCaffrey in fantasy points through 5 weeks. It is a long season. Okay. People have had, bad streaks through 5 weeks, and then they turn out to be studs. We've seen Josh Gordon before. He's a good football player. There's a lot of stuff like this. Don't panic. It's still early in the season. If you've got a bad record, you do need to make some different moves. Go for the upside, but it's 5 weeks. Remember, TJ Yeldon was ahead of Christian McCaffrey through 5 weeks last year.
Yep.
All right, guys, that's all for today's show. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all the questions. Wish we could. Again, hit us up on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro, at MacTiglier NFL. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a like as well. Subscribe for future content. I've got my live stream on Thursday. Tags has his on Sunday. And again, thanks to the sponsor of today's show, Manscaped. Go to our promo code FantasyPros for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for watching and enjoy your football.